When Charlie met Jesus. Chapter 7. When Jesus broke death. If Jesus walked out of his grave, then no grave gets the final word.
The days after reading the crucifixion felt strangely heavy. Nothing in my routine changed. I still answered emails, sat in traffic, bought the same coffee, but Jesus stayed with me. I couldn't shake the images, the beatings, the nails, the final cry. It felt tragic, unjust, final. Death always feels final. We avoid thinking about it, but it finds us anyway. Funerals, hospital rooms, empty chairs at family gatherings. I'd always assumed death won in the end. A few evenings later, Sheldon and I met at a small park overlooking a lake. The sunset reflected across the water while joggers passed behind us. After a few minutes of small talk, he gave me a knowing smile.
You finished John's Gospel.
Yeah.
And?
I stared at the lake. I didn't expect that. He nodded.
Most people don't.
After the crucifixion, I thought the story was over. But then, the tomb was empty. The words felt strange, even as I repeated them. According to John, Jesus was buried. Everyone knew he was dead. Soldiers, followers, the women at the tomb, the religious leaders. Then suddenly, he wasn't. I keep asking myself, I said, what actually happened?
That is the most important question in history.
He let the moment settle.
If Jesus stayed dead, he was just another teacher. But if he didn't?
Everything changes, I said quietly. Because I was beginning to see it. The resurrection wasn't just another miracle. It was the one that forced every claim of Jesus into focus. I thought about the statements I'd been reading for weeks. I am the Good Shepherd. I am the resurrection and the life. I am the way, the truth, and the life. They had sounded bold before. Now they sounded like claims that demanded a verdict. How do you know the disciples didn't make it up? I asked. Sheldon picked up a stone and tossed it into the lake.
Think about the disciples before the resurrection.
They were scared.
Terrified. Hiding behind locked doors. They weren't planning a movement.
He paused.
Then, something happened.
The breeze rippled the water as he continued.
Within weeks, those same frightened men were publicly proclaiming that Jesus had risen from the dead.
People change their minds, I said.
Sure, but people don't willingly suffer and die for something they know is a lie.
That point hit hard. People can die for beliefs that are mistaken, but not for something they invented. If the disciples stole the body, they knew it. If they fabricated the story, they knew it. Yet they spent the rest of their lives insisting they had seen the risen Jesus. Many were imprisoned, many suffered, several were executed, and none ever recanted.
There's something else,
Sheldon added.
The resurrection, appearances.
I knew what he meant. John described Jesus appearing to Mary Magdalene, then to the disciples, then to Thomas, the skeptic who refused to believe without evidence. The stories didn't read like legends. They felt too honest. Thomas doubted. Peter failed. Mary mistook Jesus for a gardener. Nobody seemed ready for a resurrection. If someone were inventing a story, why make the heroes look so confused? Sheldon smiled.
Thomas reminds me of you.
I smirked, but he continued gently.
He wanted evidence. He wasn't willing to pretend.
The sun dipped lower, turning the clouds crimson. For a while, neither of us spoke. Finally, I asked the question that had been growing inside me. Why does the resurrection matter so much? Sheldon watched a flock of birds rise from the far side of the lake.
Because death is humanity's greatest enemy. Every disease, every funeral, every grave, every fear of what comes next, they all trace back to the same problem, death. But the resurrection of Jesus declares that death doesn't get the final word.
A chill ran through me despite the warm evening air.
The cross tells us Jesus died for our sins. The resurrection tells us his sacrifice was accepted. The cross reveals his love. The resurrection reveals his victory.
I thought about the people I'd lost. My grandfather, a friend from high school, others whose faces surfaced in old photos. For the first time, the resurrection felt like more than a religious idea. It felt like hope, real hope, the kind that walks into cemeteries and says, "This isn't the end." As darkness settled across the lake, Sheldon stood.
So where are you now, Charlie?
The question caught me off guard. A short time ago, Jesus had been a historical figure to me, then interesting, then compelling. Now, I wasn't just wondering whether he existed. I was wrestling with whether he truly was who he claimed to be. I don't know exactly where I am, I admitted, but I looked down at the worn copy of John's Gospel in my hands. If Jesus really rose from the dead, then I don't think he's asking for my opinion anymore. Sheldon smiled.
No.
I swallowed. For the first time, I understood what had been building through every conversation, every question, every page. Jesus wasn't asking for admiration. He was asking for trust. And I knew our next conversation would force me to decide whether I was willing to give it.
I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me, though he may die, he shall live. John 11:25.